All right, everybody. How you doing? It's News Debate. I am Lee. Great to have you here. Got a late start to the show. Joining us over on stereo, Cunty, make it balls. Large presence over on stereo. Great to have you here. Also, Charlie Dean. And over on Twitter Spaces, we have patreon.com/NEWZ debate supporter, Apostate Nate. Nate, can you join us as a speaker? Unmute yourself.
It's been a minute.
Whoa, you got the auto tune. Let's hope that clears up. That was pretty funny. Yes, it's been a hot minute. I haven't been doing shows for a while. Great to have you on, Nate. Without any prompts from anybody, I wanted to tackle the Epstein list and how Donald Trump is not giving that out, how Donald Trump is not really addressing the fact that he looks like he could be in the Epstein list. I'm gonna go ahead and increase the volume on my mic.
Oh, can you not hear me?
No, I hear you, Apostate.
I'm eating my cell phone right now, so trying not to come in with a mic that's a little bit too hot. The first thing I think of about the Epstein case, Lee, is that recently Stephen King, on his return to X, he made a famous, fairly post attention where he doesn't think the Epstein list even exists. And I don't know how familiar you were with that line of thinking on it, because my immediate reservation, if there is no list, then why was it on Pam Bondi's desk, apparently? Because that's what we were told, right?
No, she was on TV saying that it was on her desk and she was taking a look at it. So I don't believe for a second there isn't a said list. Now, we can debate about what that list is, but there definitely was a list that they were teasing they were going to release, and then they completely backtracked and not only did not release it, but said it did not exist. So I don't believe that for a second. We have tape of Trump talking about releasing it. Pam Bondi literally said it's on my desk. Once again, what is that list? That could be a discussion. But at the very least, I'm going to go ahead and say Trump did not live up to his repeated promises to release more, which included this said list. And what does that mean? What do you think that means, Apostate Nate? And then we're going to jump to some stereo messages.
I mean, Lee, I don't think right now I can't say that I know Trump is on that list. What I can say is if we found out he were on that list, there are facets of his character, his history, things that he's done and said that don't exactly conflict, let's say, with him appearing on the list. I wonder what's going on with him half the time.
Are you talking about the reported picture that he drew, I think, on Epstein's birthday card, like a lady, that sort of thing? I've seen that reported. Jon Stewart did a nice thing on that.
I mean, that's in view, and we know that Trump and Epstein did have some kind of at least relationship. The full details of that, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I think that's...
He gave him a birthday card, took some photos with him. I mean, we know that.
This has really tried to downplay it. For example, I know that they're just routine this plane once, okay? And I have a feeling that I have a feeling there's a lot of mental gymnastics going on in MAGA right now, and dare I say it appears to be somewhat fractured.
I think Apostate Nate is being attacked by MAGA right now. They're attacking your internet. Apostate Nate, stay with us. I'm not sure what you're doing right now. Let's just see if that clears up in a few moments. And in the meantime, let's jump over here to Auntie McItballs. over on stereo, and also Charlie Dean. Apologies for the late start to today's show. I had a device go down. With this simulcasting stuff, you have to have multiple devices and computers to make that work. And I used to simulcast to like 10 different places. Unfortunately, social audio, what it is now, there's just not a lot out there. I might go back and check out Clubhouse. Clubhouse was 99.9% dead. And they reversed some of the changes they made that were in favor of having chat rooms with voice messages rather than live shows. And they quickly realized that mistake. So Clubhouse has come back a little bit, few percentage points. So maybe we'll show up on Clubhouse. There's also a few other things like Chatter. So maybe I'll start going from Twitter Spaces and Stereo to Clubhouse and Chatter. I have the ability to do that. I've kind of liked going down to just two because then I can focus on those. That was always the problem. My eyes looking at too many things and missing when people left a message or requested to speak. But I think I could handle three or four, so maybe we'll go back to that. Let's hear from Auntie McItballs over on stereo.
What are y'all doing today? Don't you think we have more important things to worry about than these stupid Epstein files? Everybody's, wanting these things released, and conspiracy theorists are saying Trump's in them and this and that. But, Biden had these same files way before Trump did. Why didn't he release them? Why weren't y'all worried about it then? Why weren't y'all making a big deal about it then? Something to think about. So, yes.
Love Auntie McItballs over there. Yeah, I mean it's all Biden's fault. This is what Trump is saying. So dare I say you're playing into what he's been throwing out there. He was saying, "Oh, okay, well, these files existed when Biden was in the White House, therefore we can't trust them." Now, of course, he knew this previously and didn't think this was a big deal when he talked about releasing this list. And Pam Bondi said the list was on her desk. They didn't seem to care about that then. But now that it looks like Trump may be on that list, or there may be something that would have been released in that I'm going to release the list and other Epstein files promises that were made over and over again that they didn't think existed before. That's an interesting point, is that if Trump is connected to Epstein in a way that looks really bad or just is really bad, wouldn't he have known that beforehand? Maybe he was making all these promises before he actually looked into what this data was. And then someone's like, oh, President Trump, hypothetically, just saying, I'm just asking questions here. Oh, President Trump, did you know about? Oh my God, we can't release this. And then, secondly, Auntie Make It Balls, your point about why didn't we care back then? Okay, people cared less back then. I would say some people certainly cared back then. But the reason we care about this a lot more now is because Trump has been talking about this and then changed his tune. So it's hard for me to criticize the idea that people are very interested in this now when Trump has been saying he would release it and then is backtracked. And when all of this stuff has been coming out, check out Jon Stewart's coverage, clearly linking him to Epstein in some way, and then Trump coming out and being like, I don't draw. I'm not a drawer. And then clearly that's not true. He drew a bunch of pictures for charity over the years. And apparently, I don't know that this is in doubt, that did send a birthday card where he drew something on it. So, the fact that he's gone back on his promises and is now clearly lying about, oh, I never draw, it doesn't look good. So if you weren't interested in this Epstein release before, I would say you definitely should be interested now. So we can argue, well, why wasn't this important before? Well, it's important now for all the reasons I've just pointed out, plus probably a bunch of others I'm not even thinking about. Yes, Apostate Nate over on Twitter Spaces, your hand is up.
So, question for you, Lee, on the heels of all that. I hope you can hear me. Do you think the Trump administration is wagging the dog with the Obama Russian story? Um, that's my question to you, I think, yeah.
Yeah, great reference to an old movie. What I haven't seen this. What's the Obama Russian thing? I This is a twist I have not heard
Well,
about.
the Trump's Justice Department is now saying that Obama colluded to make it look like Trump was involved in this Russian hoax in the 2016 election. Okay, and that story, I'm actually surprised it's been a bit off your radar because it's been
You
a
mean
pretty
like
big.
collusion?
Um, oh yeah, like the Obama administration made up the Russian collusion story as like an election distraction, interference,
Well,
whatever.
if it wasn't the Obama administration, it was the media. And if it wasn't the media, it was someone else. And maybe it was all three. I don't know about the Obama administration, but Democrats as a whole, and therefore most mainstream media outlets, including NPR, they rammed that stuff down our throat, and it wasn't true. So I don't know about the Obama administration, but it wasn't true. Do you disagree?
I can't say that I was ever really all that persuaded on Trump's ties to the Russians. That doesn't mean that the Russians didn't have their own actions and their own interests. But
Yes.
I
Now, the
remember at the
Russians
time the evidence.
certainly interfere with our elections and everything else. But do you disagree that it was shoved down our throats, whether or not you were
No,
open
no, no.
to having it
I think
shoved
that
down?
I agree with you. I think the press had a dog in that fight. I think they really wanted that story to be true. Heck, I don't like the guy. I wouldn't have a problem with that story being true. It's
I
nothing
would have been
against
happy
my.
if that story was true because I also don't like Trump, but I wouldn't have pursued it without evidence. And I don't think they had evidence other than he says nice things about Vladimir Putin, like he says nice things about all these terrible leaders. Where was the proof? Just like when Biden was clearly losing his mind and Democrats and the media were shoving it down our throat, he's the sharpest person in the meeting. And he barely sleeps. He's so active. I mean, clearly that was a lie. So to say it was a lie that Donald Trump colluded with the Russians for the election, it looks like that was a lie too.
And at the very best, Lee, I think it was probably some type of act of self delusion. Humans are pattern seeking mammals. If we want to see something happening, we can make it happen. We can see Jesus in toasts. We can see the Virgin Mary in a cloud.
Jesus and
We can see.
toast. Yes, long may he reign. You're absolutely right, but I don't accept that when George Bush was like weapons of mass destruction and there was no proof, and we actually got fake proof that turned out not to be real. So now I'm not saying that you say that's an excuse, but it doesn't make me feel better. Even though what you're saying is true, we do look for patterns, and of course, if we don't like Trump, we would be trying to say, "Oh, look at this and look at this," and at a certain level, that's fine because there's so many things you can criticize Trump about. But in the end, just like how most people criticize Trump, I think it was a complete backfire because all it did to his supporters was show that, well, nothing ever happened with that. Now, he has been convicted of 34 felonies in Manhattan, and no one seems to care about that. I don't know that his supporters would have cared if there was actual evidence, but at least in this case, if one of his supporters says, "Look what happened with Russiagate," they're correct. And I think that just gives them ammo. So I wish the Democrats would stop pursuing fake things, or at least at best case scenario, things they think are real and were too overboard with, but never really had any evidence to point to make it stick. And then all these things come out about Biden and his pardon of his son and other people and things like that. And all this does is just give ammo to Republicans. Once again, a lot of Republicans, a lot of Trump supporters don't care about facts, but at least let's pursue things that we can actually somewhat, in theory, accomplish. I would feel better about that. And I think that even though Republicans often don't care about facts, it would just give them less ammo, right?
Yeah, I agree, Lee, and I think the Democrat Party is so inert I don't even want to be a part of it. I mean, I'm a registered independent, and there's nothing that the Democrats are doing to me that makes me think I ought to sign up.
Yeah, it's not looking good. I think that there's an inkling of hope when Governor Gavin Newsom goes back on some of these Democratic Party purity tests, and says that, oh, like boys and girls should not compete in sports, no matter how they identify. He's not saying they're not allowed to identify, but specifically in sports, that's not appropriate. That's a change. And other Democrats are making that change as well. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the election. Are they going to give us another lame duck or someone who looks good, like Kamala Harris looked okay, even though she wasn't chosen through the primary system, and then just shot herself in the foot over and over again? So my go-to bet is that the Democrats are going to continue to be Democrats, which means they're going to lose elections. But there is a little bit of hope there. I'll be honest. There are some interesting
You know what
things
I
that are
hope
happening.
happens? Lee, I think the Democrats need to like find their own demagogue. And I think maybe you've kind of implied something like this in the past. Of course, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic, but correct me if I'm wrong, where I think you've said that Democrats kind of need to find their own Trump, right?
Yeah, I would be so delighted if I could vote for someone who just didn't give a shit. If I could vote for a Democrat who attacked people and just didn't care about facts and all those different things, who also was popular. If they're not popular, it doesn't matter. I would be so excited to be able to vote for them, because even if we just got a Democrat in the White House, they could try to undo some things. The things Trump's trying to do generally now they wouldn't be doing. And okay, roll the dice that they might actually do some things I would support. If we could get an a-hole as the Democratic nominee, I would be definitely interested in voting for him or her.
Yeah, I agree, Lee. Um, I think even if Democrats picked a candidate that overstepped a lot like Trump, it would at least get them back into the White House, maybe. I don't know. Like
Once
right now,
again,
I
I,
feel
I
like
would love an actual liberal person in the White House, but just having a Democrat in the White House is sort of like, pushing down on a wound. It's going to start to stop bleeding as much, and then maybe they actually will start to do some good things, but who knows? But at this point, even though I do agree that Trump is right about our NATO allies not paying their fair share, not doing their fair share, and that's been the case for a very long time, and even Republicans didn't really push that. So I agree with him. I'm not sure about the way he goes about it. I agree that we should enforce border policy. I agree that people who are here illegally generally should be worried about being deported, because that's what a border is. But the way they're going about it, right? So I would be happy just to stop the deportations and have a Democrat in there, even though generally I think the deportations are just enforcing the law because it's giving us a black eye. I mean, I'm reading all these articles about people who can't get in the United States and students and things like that. So I'd be interested in a change. I would also love a Democrat who actually enforced border policy and was not ashamed to be deporting people. But I'd also put up with like an Obama Biden administration that deported millions of people and just didn't talk about it, or like Joe Biden continued to build the wall as president and just didn't talk about it. So I would take that at this point, and we would get rid of the tariffs. Although the tariffs are interesting, now it's switching from, now that the tariffs are becoming a reality, it's switching from, this is hurting the market. It doesn't mean that those previous reports were untrue, because it creates a lot of uncertainty. But now they're talking about Donald Trump is using tariffs to just generate a bunch of cash. And I think that generally we've been in the bad position with a lot of our allies when it comes to these tariffs. And if we finally have arrived at the point that, well, we're actually making money off of this and it's not killing the economy, or it's not killing jobs specifically to the tune that we thought it could, I'm interested in tariffs all of a sudden. So I'm interested in some of these things that Trump's doing, but I'm also interested in taking a breather, taking a pause, getting someone in the White House who maybe just, once again, stops the bleeding. And then, oh boy, I'd be really excited if we had someone who just didn't give a shit on the left that we could vote for.
I agree, Lee. I think I agree with all that, especially when you talk about you don't like the way that Trump is going about things. When you talk about, for example, something like NATO, and even though NATO allies are not pulling their fair weight, does that make it the best and the most moral decision for the United States to threaten to withdraw? Because if the United States pulls out of NATO, NATO's done. Okay,
I
there's
don't
not
know that
much
we're
left.
ever going to pull out of NATO, but I think Donald Trump's actually getting results on NATO. And I got to say, if we pulled out of NATO and just said, "Hey, you guys got to take care of yourselves," it actually, in theory, I'm not against that either because they can, they just don't. So while that would be terrifying to pull out of NATO, generally, I do want to leave NATO. I want these countries to take care of themselves. But Trump probably wouldn't handle it well.
That's a really interesting dynamically. I think I've thought about that about Trump for a long time. Is that sometimes the ideas aren't as batshit as we think, but the way that he actually executes them, like his role as an executor in the executive branch, is eh. And that's not to say that I agree with most of what he does, but I think you're right. I think part of the problem is the execution.
Yeah, I mean, it's like getting a surgery that you think is a good idea, and you're like, okay, it's going to be painful, but this is something I had to do. And then you just get a butcher as a surgeon. The surgeon shows up drunk. They start the surgery, they stop the surgery, they restart the surgery, they say, oh, we never said we were going to do a surgery, those sort of things. So it's like you can get behind an idea, but the execution is what's really terrible. Let's jump over to stereo. We're going to hear from Charlie Dean, and I'm just rolling the dice on these. They don't have any. They don't
Hey,
have any
real quick,
captions. So Charlie, I'm sorry. Yeah,
I'm gonna
continue.
be down to listen
Apostate
for
Nate.
just a few minutes here. I'm gonna be down to listen here for just a few minutes, but I'll be back. Just to let you
Yep,
know.
do what you got to do, man. Always great to have you. Be like Apostate Nate and support the show on patreon.com/NEWZ debate. Be like, in fact, a bunch of great people pull this up. Be like Apostate Nate's Better Vibes, Lola, Shannon, Sneaky Elbow, Ron, MC Funk, Bjorn, a bunch of people over on patreon.com/NEWZ debate makes you an instant co-host. But we want to hear from everybody no matter what. So let's hear from Charlie over on stereo. Hopefully this one was a good one.
Trump is being blackmailed by Israel because Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad spy, and he has a lot of dirt on a lot of powerful people in America, and also the royal family because of Prince Andrew and Epstein's affiliation to Prince Andrew. And that's why Trump has probably been the most pro-Israeli leader, US leader that's ever existed. It's because Jeffrey Epstein, the intelligence that he gathered and the dirt that he has on him and the association Jeffrey Epstein has with Israel is, well, yeah, it means that Israel are able to convey a lot of power over him.
So if that's true, why did Trump talk up the Epstein files, and why did he say that he was going to release things? So I'm open to some ideas. Um, it just doesn't make sense to me. If he's being blackmailed, you never talk about these things. If he had some sort of inappropriate relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, you would never talk about these things. You can't even say, well, he was going to release it, but then he started getting blackmailed. If there's something to blackmail him about, he wouldn't have brought this up. So I guess the only way that could work is if they're blackmailing him on something else. But what could it possibly be? What could Trump have done that would actually put him in jeopardy? I mean, being connected in a really bad way to a pedophile, I feel like that's something, but I don't know what else there is. I don't think Donald Trump murders people. I don't think he's got bodies buried somewhere. So what else could it be other than he's being blackmailed for his relationship with Epstein? And if that's the case, why would he talk it up? I just don't think it makes any sense. Leave some more voice messages. I'm just missing the connection there. I'm willing to go down the rabbit hole with you on this. I just don't see what that connection is. What is it? other than the obvious. Well, let's just go to the horse's mouth here. Mr. President, you said previously that you were going to release the Epstein files, but now you say you don't need to, they don't exist. Why have you changed your mind?
I stand by my previous statement. I believe there are many reasons why it's important to keep these files sealed. First and foremost, it's a matter of national security. The information contained in these files could be highly sensitive and could have serious consequences if it were to be released.
So, if that's the case, why talk it up? Is it someone that Trump's close to that he didn't know had a connection to Epstein? What is it? He's changed his mind. Why did he change his mind? I'm still missing that piece of information. Let's jump back over here to stereo. By the way, Donald Trump, fake Donald Trump, is my constant companion on the show now, so we can ask him questions. If you have a question for Donald Trump, go ahead and ask it, and then I'll ask the president. We'll get down to the bottom of it, perhaps through direct conversation with one Donald Trump. All right, let's hear from Doberman. Take it away.
Also, there seems to be a level of cynicism that comes with the right right now. There's like, well, why didn't the Democrats say it? Well, technically, Trump was in office the first time it happened. Like, Epstein was killed when all this stuff came out. Initially, Trump was still in office in 2019 and in 2020. So Trump had a while to say something. He still didn't. Yes, Biden and the gang have something to do with it as well, or responsibility of their lack of action. But it doesn't matter. We have a chance to do it right now. At any moment, we can do that. So the cynical thing is, it's like talking about what it could have, should have, when we can do it right now. I don't know. It just feels like a waste of time.
Yeah, I mean, he's criticized the Biden administration so much, but he's not releasing it either. So he's criticizing himself. I mean, he really could release it now if he wanted to. We know it existed because they talked about it. And if we just say for a second it didn't exist, so they were just lying about it. I mean, there's no, if you're a Trump supporter and you're reasonable, there's no way out of this other than Trump yet again is a liar. But why would he lie about this? Or he's connected to it, knew he was connected to it, but didn't think it was in the files, and then discovered it was in the files. I mean, there's only limited options here, ladies and gentlemen. So it's got to be one of these. Let's hear now from Charlie.
It could be the case that, well, working in colludes with the Israelis, or knowingly knowing that they have dirt on him, that they could release the Epstein files without him in it. And that way he's, free of the dirt that's on him. So that might be why he's brought it up, as he's in the position of power to be able to sort of control the narrative the way he wants it, and the names that get released are the ones that he wants, and him being like implicit in it, well, it won't contain him in it. So I think that could be the case of it. Just because he's brought it up doesn't mean that he's innocent. I think far from it. I mean, I've seen interviews with him where he's like actively avoided the question. So yeah, I think that he's done some stuff, right, and Epstein's probably been aware of that, provided him with what.
So if we go with this, they could just release it now and take out the Trump stuff. So I don't see how Israel influences him in this way, because he's in control of it. So he could always just release it. I assume he's afraid, if this is the hypothetical, that if he releases it, it'll be too obvious that he's been removed. So he's just not releasing it. But I still don't see how he could be blackmailed. You can't be blackmailed when you're in charge of what you're being blackmailed over. If someone has some photos of you and you're married and they're going to release them, they can blackmail you in theory. But if you control the photos and they're like, we know you have the photos, uh, we're blackmailing you, then you just change the photos or you don't release the photos, right? So it still doesn't make sense to me. I'm still not seeing it. Yes, Apostate Nate, you're joining us over on Twitter Spaces. Your hand is up.
Yeah, Lee, I just wanted to clarify the post I put here, and I don't have the greatest signal at the moment, so if you can't hear me, feel free to cut me off. But when the Trump administration was seemingly much more enthusiastic about releasing the Epstein files, they did a thing where I don't know how they picked these people, but they were like influencers, media influencers of some kind, and they gave them binders that were supposed to have the first phase of the release of the documentation. We haven't heard about any of this since, and it just feels like a big meaningless photo op to me in the context of current events.
And was that the influencer photo op that you tweeted about?
That's correctly.
Yeah. All right. So I want to get down to that. Thank you for that update. Let's jump back over here to stereo, and we're going to continue to hear from. Oh, by the way, you sound fine now, Apostate Nate. We'll hear from Doberman again.
And the final thing I want to say about it is, as well as totally blanked out. Sorry, man. Just give me a moment. The last thing I want to say about it is this thing is blackmailing, like you were talking about. Bingo, that's what I want to talk about. The blackmailing thing. I think this affects part of insider trading, how economics run in America, like who gets tax cuts, who doesn't, how policy works, all based around this blackmailing scheme. This is affecting the quality of our lives due to some people feeling like I can't do this certain policy. I can't cross the aisle due to the people that donate to me would punish me or even try to get me arrested if I try to do the right thing.
So Doberman, let me know if I missed anything there, because I'm still wondering how people blackmail him when he was the one talking this up for so long and he's in charge of releasing it. So I'm still missing that connection. If anyone can give me that connection, maybe that'll give me some clarity. I'm still missing that. So if it's people who donate to his campaign or it's people who are connected to Israel, whatever it is, he's in charge of this. So how do they blackmail him? Now, if there are other people on the list and so they don't want their names released, okay, I can imagine he gets a donation from them after he's talked it up for so long and then doesn't want to release it. But is it worth it for him because he's getting all this stuff? Like apparently Joe Rogan has turned on him now. Um, and he talked about this for so long. So people waited till like the last minute to donate to him. And who are these people donating to him? Because I think all of this is tracked, right? So who's doing this? I mean, these are interesting ideas, but again, like with Russiagate, where is any of the proof? All we know now is that he was saying he was going to release it for so long and then says it doesn't exist and is attacking Democrats and doing all these other things. I guess you could fit in some donor stuff there, but all he has to do is just not take their donation. Does he need that money that much? He's in his final term. He's rich himself. He's getting money from ABC and CBS, and like universities are now paying settlements. I don't know where that money goes to, but I assume it just doesn't go to Trump. Um, I just don't see the donor angle making any more sense. Does it fit? I mean, if you really try to smush it in there, I guess it could. But is it worth it for Trump to do that? And I don't think it fits perfectly, right? So these are the questions that I have. Reggie has joined us over on Twitter Spaces. Lord Reggie, if you'd like to throw in, we can get to some other topics. But right now we're talking about Trump and the Epstein list and his back and forth. And now it doesn't exist. And he's attacking Democrats. And, well, we can't release it because they could have changed it. But he didn't realize that over the past several months and years. Doesn't make any sense. You just can't use his excuses. So what actually is it? Let's check back in over on stereo. We're going to hear now again from Charlie.
It doesn't make sense because, well, it makes sense in my head is that if you were to buy into the idea that Jeffrey Epstein was an Israeli intelligence officer or a spy or whatever, which, by the way, if you're sort of interested in that theory, Eric Weinstein on YouTube has a great explanation as to why he thinks it is, and it sort of makes it like blaringly obvious that he was. Then you realize that America aren't the one that hold the files. You know, that's their perspective on the situation. And yeah, obviously there's like narrative control. And obviously I'd imagine I get what you're saying. If they were to bring out their narrative first, that could sort of like, you know, undermine whatever the Israelis have. But the point is that I would imagine that because he was a direct accomplice with the Israeli intelligence service, what Israel has, as in like their files, is a lot more comprehensive than what the CIA has.
So why did this change in the last several weeks, month versus before? Trump has been a big supporter of Israel forever. He was the president before. He would know that Epstein, someone he had a relationship, if hypothetically is true, was some sort of agent, some intelligence agent. He would know all these things. So why did it change so recently? I haven't heard why it's changed so recently. And if someone has a theory on this, go ahead and just tell me what the theory is. It's not helpful to say, oh, someone else has this theory. I won't be able to check that in real time. Just go ahead and tell me what the theory is. Let's just get all the information out there because all of this is hypothetical. We don't know what Jeffrey Epstein was. I think he was murdered in prison, but we don't know exactly what he could have been doing other than being a terrible person. We don't even know exactly how much of a terrible person he was. All of that could be in the files. We'll never know the exact truth, so it might be even worse than we imagine. Why did it change so recently? That's what I want to hear. Why did it change so recently? Let's jump back to stereo, and we're going to hear from Doberman again.
Oh, my apologies. I was talking about the black book, everyone involved, like the people below Trump. Yes, Trump was best friends with Epstein's, of course, like as we know. So, of course, Trump has the keys to the kingdom, but there is many other people that are part of that as well who are on that island who are being protected. And I hate to say it, but what I witnessed, a little bit of what I've seen, it does seem like Bill Clinton has a bit of involvement in it too. Bill Clinton was friends with Epstein as well. You know, this is across party lines, you know, and this is why it shouldn't be a partisan issue. Like everyone who was ever involved with this child sex trafficking should be held accountable, not just to protect children, but so we can have a more honest and just government that actually serves the people.
So now you're saying that Donald Trump is protecting Bill Clinton, who he just puts down all the time, and the husband of Hillary Clinton, who he absolutely hates. I just don't see it. I don't see why it's changed so recently. If all of this was true, you're telling me when he was talking about this forever, anything that we've discussed now didn't come up sooner? Why did it come up now? Nothing I've heard tells us why it didn't come up before. Even if it's a donation, like what insane amount of money could they donate that would make him flip like this? If it's he's connected to the files, didn't he know that previously when he was president? Wouldn't he have known that because he would remember hypothetically terrible things he did with Jeffrey Epstein? Why now? Nothing thus far has been about now. So let's ask the president. Mr. President, why did you decide to not release the Epstein files after saying you would for so long? What changed?
I made the decision to withhold the files for several reasons. The first is that releasing them could have a negative impact on the ongoing investigation into the Epstein case. Second, it's important to consider the privacy of those involved. Finally, I believe that it would be irresponsible to release such sensitive information without proper review and analysis.
So again, how is that now versus before? There's nothing. Why now versus before? I don't see it. Someone please tell me why. Apostate Nate tweets, Trump supposedly released the data on JFK, and I'll add he also released some MLK data. And what do we actually know because of that? He thinks we'll simply forget again, just like how nobody is talking about JFK anymore. Yeah, I mean, once again, he's trying to make us think of other things. He's trying to point out other things to take our attention. Some Republican supporters are taking the bait. Others, like Joe Rogan, are saying, no, we still want this. We don't buy your weird changing your mind. I mean, to be fair to Trump, this is what he's always done. So he must be really surprised that this isn't working. But I guess when you trump this up for months and months and months, even some people who I think don't care about facts say this doesn't make any sense. Lord Reggie, feel free to join us with your voice, but you have tweeted, the list is just a whole debacle. I think at first Trump was all for releasing it because he didn't realize how much the list was about him. Then he saw how much he was on there, and he went full Joe Biden with the list. There is no list. Can't trust the list. Yeah, okay, but you're telling me that hypothetically Trump is connected to Jeffrey Epstein in a way that even Republicans would turn on him, and he didn't look this up until recently? I mean, he was president. That, once again, is technically possible. It does fit. The shape does fit, but there's got to be something more. It can't be that literally just a handful of weeks ago, Trump actually looked at it and then said, oh, God, we can't release this. It can't be that. I know Trump is inept in a lot of ways, but I can't believe that without some evidence. Apostate Nate has also tweeted, among Trump supporters, Kevin Sorbo seems to be demanding the list as well. Hey, everybody, Hercules. Kevin Sorbo, him and Joe Rogan, they say, we're not believing you, Trump. Don't believe it. All right, let's jump back over here to Stereo. If anybody over on Twitter Spaces wants to speak, just go ahead and raise your hand. Let's hear a new voice. Let's hear from MX Phillips. Take it away.
To be honest, I don't think anything has changed. I don't think Trump or Biden care whether they're in these files or not. I feel like this whole Epstein files is being used as power play. So the reason why Biden didn't release it is so that they can now use it. When now Trump is president, they can say, well, Trump is now president. He should release them. It's power play. There's no reason, because technically, again, if these people aren't in there, there's technically no reason for why it shouldn't be released. And I don't think it is anything sensitive or corrupt. It's just power play.
So that one I'm scratching my head over. If it's just we don't release it so that when Trump becomes president, they can say, "Oh, look, he's not releasing it." Trump has said he would release it. So, don't know about that. But then also you say power play, but I don't see any power here. Democrats were never calling for this release. If I remember correctly, Democrats, if you just use that term for a moment, were generally like, we're not talking about this. So were some Democrats saying that things needed to be released? Probably, but no, Democrats weren't talking about this. So if it's a power play, you're missing the discussion. It's just Trump, and then Trump gets everyone else to talk about it, and then he reverses, and most people in power are like, "Oh no, I support the president." So you can't claim it's a power play when there is no power play going on. So I appreciate the idea. Leave me some more messages, try to better explain so that I can understand. But you can't have a power play when there's no power play, right? Doesn't that make sense? All right, let's go back to stereo. Let's hear again from Charlie.
I think it's like obvious. It's because he knows that like the right wing MAGA types have like, I guess, a conspiratorial like nature to believe in this deep state, like secret service that secretly, well, controls America. And Trump would definitely, when he was trying to get elected, would try and say things to appease that type of audience. So saying things like, oh, I'm going to release the Epstein files, knows that that's going to get voters. And then probably when he's gone into office and they've sat him down and they've gone through it with him, he's gone, oh shit. And then he's realized that he couldn't, go by his word. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Like, there must be some really damning shit on there. I really wouldn't think too hard about why he's changed his mind. It's pretty obvious why he's changed his mind.
But it's not. He was president before, so he already had that opportunity. Secondly, he was still beating this dead horse while he was in the White House. When Pam Bondi was appointed, she was talking about it as well. So if it was just to get elected, why did they keep talking about it into his actual living in the White House for like one day a week, because he's at Mar-a-Lago the rest of the time? And then like fourthly, whatever number I'm on, this was not big enough to get him elected. If you look at all of the voter turnout and stuff like that, it's the economy. It's always the economy. It was immigration. It was all these other things. This is nowhere near that. So this doesn't fit. I appreciate the idea. It's interesting to contemplate, certainly, but it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit at all. Let's go back here. I'm going to try to hear from as many voices as possible. Once again, raise your hand over on Twitter Spaces if you want to talk. Let's check back in with MX Phillips, and then we'll hear from Doberman.
But nobody's going to like me for what I'm about to say. Trump is the best president so far. Why? Not for good reasons. He's the most transparent. You are telling me now that you didn't know that this man was going to do things like this. This man didn't show any signs of being like this. You're telling me this man hid how he acts. To me, Trump is the perfect person because, yes, there are some hidden things, but he is too proud of himself to keep things secret. So he will tell you how he feels, and you know your position. He is not secretly corrupt. He is openly corrupt.
Well, I will agree with you. He is openly corrupt. So checkmates bullseye. That's true. But I would disagree. I think even for Trump, this is hard to do. But this Epstein files thing is unique. Nothing else is quite like this. And I don't think anything else is really close. But you're right. The back and forth, changing his mind, that's totally Trump. He's open about that. He's corrupt. He's openly corrupt. So, yes, we agree. This is different, though. This is different. And I love that you say that he's the best president. That's interesting. So let's ask him. Mr. President, a friend of mine thinks you are a perfect president. Why are you a perfect president?
Thank you for that kind comment. I'm glad that some people see my presidency as a success. I believe that I'm doing the best I can for our country, and I'm grateful for the support of my constituents.
He takes the compliments. All right. Look at that. Let's check back in on stereo with Doberman.
Well, it's not about protecting Bill Clinton. It's simple about self-preservation. It doesn't mean he was friends with Bill Clinton, but Bill Clinton and Epstein and Trump were both friends with Epstein. Bill Clinton and Trump are friends with Epstein. That's just the reality. They don't have to like each other, and Trump is a liar, a con man. So he would totally be the type to use. Remember, I don't know if you ever saw that old Larry King interview when Trump was really young, and he said, if he ever ran for president, he would run after Republicans because he says they're stupid. Quote, he says, Republicans are dumb and gullible. So, like, Trump is absolutely the type of person that would only associate Bill Clinton with being a pedophile, even though he was hanging out at this pedophile island himself. Like, he doesn't have to like Clinton to care about saving his own ass.
But again, why the change recently? Nothing that you just said, none of those, hypothetical facts point to why it changed recently. I'm still waiting for that. Apostate Nate has tweeted, this is a very different conversation if Trump doesn't promise to release the files. It's that simple. Exactly. So if he's like, I hate the Clintons, but if the Clintons go down, so do I. Okay, I could understand that. But then why talk about it so much? It doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit. It fits, once again, if it's a different conversation where Trump doesn't promise over and over again to release the files, doesn't bring up the files over and over again, and then you have this very distinct change. So what's driving that very distinct change? It's not because, well, the Clintons go down, he goes down. It's not because of that. That doesn't explain it. It doesn't explain it to say, well, he's an openly corrupt person because, I mean, yeah, that's a fact. We know that. But you build this up and tear it down? I mean, he hasn't done anything like this. He goes back and forth on tariffs, and he goes back and forth on this, that, or the other, but he never takes a single issue, has a 180 turn, and then denies that things existed that they said did exist, and then starts throwing, if you like shoot a missile at an aircraft, they have countermeasures. I've seen it in movies. They'll like shoot off things that look like fireworks to try to distract and confuse the missile. Trump's full confusing the missile right now. He's trying to distract that missile, that Epstein missile. He's never done this exact thing before. And it was after so much of, I'm going to release it, Pam Bondi has it on her desk. Why the sudden change? Haven't gotten that yet. Let's hear from MX Phillips.
Because what's bothering me is during Biden's time, they didn't release their files. Why is it now miraculously, when Trump is now president, all of a sudden they want to now release the files? Why didn't they release it during their time? Watch, when now the next time someone who's in the Democrats, all of a sudden the Republicans will now want to release the Epstein files. What? At this moment, it's not that it's not serious. It's just that I'm tired of release them. Oh, this is happening. That is happening. I don't care anymore. Release it or not. One way or another, I just need money.
Yeah, once again, it's not about the Epstein files. It's about the economy. That's always the main issue. And if not the main, it's the second issue. And then the unfortunate thing there is the perception of the economy. rather than actually what's going to happen when you put someone in power, or what they did previously when they were president. That fits Trump because he was in the White House before. So I think that you're just like, I don't care. That's what Trump wants. So that's what he's going for. Either you get angry at the Democrats or you just don't care anymore because you're just pissed off in general. I think, if anyone can correct me here, I think the Democrats would say there's nothing more that we need to release. There may be more files, but there's nothing that is going to give us any more clarity. You know, they released the JFK files, that Trump released the JFK files, he released the MLK files. There were no new shocking updates. So if you have all these files and it takes a lot of work to get them released, and there's nothing new that you really need to learn from that you can learn from that, I should say, what's the point of releasing them? Okay, well, we should just release them because they have them. I mean, how many files does the government have on anything that we care about and things we don't care about? That's a slippery slope. So they need to release everything. That's a lot of work, and they're not going to want to release everything. So the Democrats were not the ones that talked about this. So I'm just really confused why people keep bringing up the Democrats, other than Bill Clinton, who I think's like a walking sex offender, basically. My opinion, not convicted. My opinion, he's a dangerous guy. I just am confused why people keep bringing up the Democrats when Trump was the one who brought this up. Now, if Trump actually, in a different alternate reality, did release the files and there was really interesting, damning stuff in there, then we could talk about the Democrats. Why did they not release it? But we're not there. So until that happens, I'm confused what the Democrats have to do with any of this, other than a specific Democrat who had a connection to Epstein. Apostate Nate has tweeted, on some level, I'm convinced that Trump thinks he can pin the entire problem on the Democrats. Well, that's what he's tried to do, Apostate Nate. It hasn't really stuck. Because once again, it doesn't fit. If he could have done the exact same thing he's doing now, but after he released the files. After he released the files, if hypothetically they contained some details, he could say, oh, look, the crooked Democrats, they didn't release these. That would make sense. And maybe I would agree with that, depending on what was in the files. But you can't do that before you release the files, and especially when you say the files don't exist and they don't matter. Doesn't make sense. Let's hear from Charlie.
Hasn't he done this before, though? Didn't he say the same thing with the JFK files? Like, he literally said, I'm going to release the JFK files. I'm going to release the Epstein files. It's because he knows that's a brilliant right-wing talking point. And then when it actually comes to it, and then the media start talking about it again because something else comes out about it, and he gets pressured in the media, he says, oh no, I'm not going to, or I didn't, or whatever. And I'm not too clued up on the whole JFK situation, but I remember a while ago, him saying that he wanted to release all that stuff, is that he just does it. He's a caricature. His whole thing is that he needs to appease to a certain audience. He is essentially just an actor, and people take him too seriously. Is he will say anything if he believes that he can get him support in any way.
Thank you for the comment. So the difference is that Trump did not have a relationship with JFK. No one thinks Trump killed JFK. In fact, would that even work? Does that even work with timings? So he can talk about the JFK files, and I have ChatGPT up right now. We're going to read about that. But he's not involved with the JFK files. He is involved with Epstein. Clearly, that's the case. Now, what level of involvement, maybe we would know if he would release the files like he said he would. But aside from all of that, these are not things that got him elected. They're things that got him coverage in the media. So you could argue about that, I guess. But these are not polling issues that got him the election. They're just not. So I'll just say that again. I don't know if you'll believe me, but they're just not. So looking at ChatGPT right now. Did Trump release the JFK files after he said he would? No. Trump did not fully release all the JFK assassination files, even though he said he would. Here's the breakdown. In 2017, Trump tweeted and publicly stated he would allow the full release of the remaining classified JFK assassination records held by the National Archives. What actually happened? In October of 2017, Trump allowed the release of some records, but held back hundreds of documents at the request of intelligence agencies, especially the CIA and the FBI. He gave them a 6-month extension to justify the continued secrecy. Then, in April of 2018, Trump announced that some JFK files would remain classified until at least 2021, citing national security concerns. So he partially released them, but did not release all of them. Under Biden, full disclosure did not happen. Some documents remain classified. It says to this day. So this might be a break in ChatGPT. I'm going to say Trump is president again. Did he ever release the rest of the files? Yes, Trump eventually did release virtually all of the remaining, see, this is what I thought, remaining JFK assassination files during his second term. On January 23rd, 2025, Trump signed Executive Order 14176, directing the full declassification of assassination records relating to, as I mentioned earlier, MLK, JFK, also RFK. That was because of, hey, we have RFK Jr. in there. That was part of it as well, giving agencies 15 days to present the plans for the JFK files. Historical agencies, especially the CIA and the FBI, had previously withheld the material. By March 18th of this year, the National Archives published about 2,182 PDF files, totaling roughly 63,400 pages in 2 batches. A third dump followed shortly after, eventually reaching over 77,000 pages that were released unredacted, so full pages. The release was broad in scope. Nearly every remaining record previously withheld on national security, grand jury secrecy, or IRS-related exceptions was either released or explicitly addressed in documentation. And this is what I mentioned earlier. Experts say the files largely confirm existing know-how about intelligence operations, not new conspiracy bombshells, but they have provided clear, unredacted access to CIA and FBI memos that were previously redacted. So he did follow through with that. So yet again, Trump is not connected to JFK. No one thinks he shot JFK. And he actually followed through with what he said. So this has no connection whatsoever to what's going on with Epstein now. None whatsoever. And there's a JFK Archives Assassination Records Collection portal where you can check this out. So I encourage you to look that up if you are interested. All right, we're all caught up. Once again, over on Twitter Spaces, request to speak. We got Apostle Nate. We got Reggie over here on stereo. Got a bunch of different people. Let's keep going to some of those messages. Let's hear now from Doberman.
Yes, Trump's in the Epstein files. It's not even up for debate. Trump's in it, and we've all heard the audio recordings. Like, he was friends, like the pictures, the videos. He was best friends with Epstein for like, what, a decade or more? So it's just, and this shouldn't be a partisan issue. This should be a unanimous issue, not just the United States, but across the country, across the world, because, you know, what's that? When Prince Charles or Prince Andrew is in it, you know, he's been disowned by the royal family, but he was a part of it. One of the family members there. And so this is international. And if we're countries that say we care about children, we want to protect children, it shouldn't matter whether you have a D or an R, you're a liberal or whatever you are. We need to protect kids.
Again, I don't know why the Democrats keep coming up, because nothing has been released. So if Trump had said, like he did, oh, I'm going to release these things, and he did, even if there was nothing in there, but there were actual files that could be released, which is what happened with JFK and everything else that I just mentioned, he then could say, why didn't the Democrats do this? And if he released stuff and there actually were updates in those files, he really could say that. But Democrats, I'm going to say, have pretty much a squeaky clean record here. They didn't bring this up. They didn't say there were more files to release. And they're just there. They exist. Republicans, because of Trump, said, oh, we should release these things. And now they say they don't exist. And they say that even if they do exist, we can't release them because they've been altered by the Democrats or there's an ongoing investigation. So this is not partisan politics. Or sorry, I'm getting confused here. This is not Republicans and Democrats doing this. This is not bipartisan. We don't want it to go out. It's very much the Republicans. They are the only ones talking about this, and now they've been caught with their pants down, which is a funny thing to say when we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein. Apostate Nate tweets, it's interesting that nearly, quote, nearly all the JFK files have been released. What's being left out? So what I believe ChatGPT was talking about is that nearly all the files have been released. Thousands upon thousands, like tens of thousands of documents have been released. The ones that have not are specifically addressed. So we can't release this because of national security or that. So it's not 100%, but I'm going to go ahead and say I believe they've released everything that they have, because I can imagine there's some file here and some file there that still could hurt national security or how the CIA operates or something like that. And that's reasonable. You're never going to get every file. But from what I understand in my own memory and what ChatGPT has just jogged that memory to believe, is that we're going to get no more unless it's 50 years from now. And then maybe then we'll get the handful of documents, more than a handful when you're dealing with thousands of pages, but maybe hundreds or less of documents. I don't know that, not that you were saying this, but I don't know that that's a criticism. Donald Trump seems to have delivered on JFK. I'm not surprised there are a few documents here and there that they did not release. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, Apostate Nate, you can raise your hand. I don't see your hand raised. If you can't raise your hand for some reason, just start talking over on Twitter Spaces. Let's go back to stereo. We're going to hear from Charlie.
Listen, you keep saying that, but it's like, I'm not saying that this is the singular thing as why he got elected, but it's definitely one of the reasons that like garnered played into this like personality that he was, you know, he believes in the truth and that he doesn't want to lie to Americans like the Democrats have. It's all part of this bigger picture of who he is as a person that makes people want to vote for him. It's like the bigger picture. So you can keep saying, oh, this isn't the reason why he got voted for, saying numerous things in a similar fashion that, you know, are like, you know, trying to play into people's value system. Like, oh, he's a truth speaker, you know, he only wants the truth. That will get him votes, and things, saying things like that, like releasing files, that's going to get him votes, mate.
I didn't say it did not get him votes, but it's still not something that got him into the White House. So I just have to continue saying that, and maybe you don't find as much value, but it's the fact nonetheless. What you're saying, though, does make sense. It has created sort of an aura around him of, I'm going to release things and I'm not like normal politicians. And he's certainly not like normal politicians. I'll agree with you there. But this is different because he didn't release the files. He talked about it, I think, even more than JFK and RFK and MLK. Gosh, so many letters. He didn't talk about those nearly as much. If memory served, he talked about JFK. He talked about RFK because of his Health and Human Services guy, who was a former competitor, and then he turned to the dark side and turned to Trump. But I guess it worked out for him. He has a position now. One he cares about health. I don't agree with a lot of his ideas, but I do think he actually does care about health, and he thinks he's doing the right thing. So you can do the right thing in your own mind without actually doing that. But I think he's trying to do the right thing according to what he believes. And unfortunately, he believes a lot of things that aren't true. But again, Donald Trump pulled a 180 on us. So this is not the same thing as all those other things. It was, up until recently when he changed his tune and said, oh, none of this stuff exists, or we can't release it because the Democrats changed it, or there's an ongoing investigation. So it's not the same thing. So if you had said this thing, however long this has been going on, 2 months ago, whatever it was, I don't know, I can't recall. If you had said it then, it made more sense. It doesn't make sense now. So I get the point that you're trying to make. I think we just need to move on because I don't agree with you. I believe the facts don't agree with you, but there is a core essence that is true to what you're saying. This was how he was branding himself. But then you have something that's different. And this is clearly different. He's not connected to JFK, and he released 99.9% of those files. Hey, fair enough. Touche. I'm glad that happened. He is connected to Epstein. That's not debatable. The debatable part is, what does that connection mean? Did he do anything that was illegal? Did he know that Epstein was doing terrible things and just didn't say anything? Okay, that could be a crime. Did he actually engage in some things? Well, that's definitely a crime, right? This is different. Different. Let's hear from MX Phillips.
This whole Epstein files thing, because for some reason over here we're also talking about it across the pond. Like, forget about Trump or Biden or Obama or Clinton. Why are we picking on presidents? Why are we not judging the entirety of Congress? Because right now, in the last 8 years or 12, we've had both Republicans and Democrats. Why have none of those given these files? Forget about one specific president. Why is the whole Congress not releasing these files?
Again, we don't know that these files exist, other than the fact that Trump told us they did, and Pam Bondi said it was on her desk. Are there definitely Epstein files that we have not seen? Absolutely so. Do they contain anything that we actually need to know because it changes what we think? It identifies new people? We don't know. So until these files are released and we have confirmation that they exist without going back on that confirmation, you can't blame Democrats. You can't blame Congress. And I'm going to go ahead and give Republicans a bit of a pass here, because Trump was beating this drum, and they just follow everything that he does. Trump could start punching himself in the crotch in public while he's giving speeches, and Republicans would make excuses, or they would start doing it. But it wasn't their real original idea. Were Republicans really upset about Epstein? Yes. Are Republicans always talking about child trafficking? Yes, they are. But this specificness here was something that Trump wholly brought out on his own. And people just repeated what he said because that's what they do. So I'm not going to criticize Republicans when Trump doesn't want to release the files and Trump says they don't exist. I'll criticize them when they start repeating those things because they don't point out the hypocrisy of that. But the general push of this has always been Trump. This would have died, and it just would have been on the fringe, like so many other conspiracy theories. Some of them I'm a little warm to, some of them I'm not. But this has remained front page news because of Donald Trump. So I'm not blaming Democrats. In some ways, I'm not even blaming Republicans. This wholly lies on Trump. He's the one that pulled the 180, and then everyone else started doing it too. Everyone else is just following orders. Now, just like with soldiers following orders, we can criticize that. But since this is how the system works right now with the Republicans, all the blame is on Trump. And we can talk about, oh, is he being blackmailed, or he's worried about if the Clintons fall, he falls. But again, that doesn't explain the very recent 180. So why the recent 180? I'm still waiting for that answer. Let's hear from Charlie.
And maybe what he's done is he's saying, oh, I'm going to release them. I'm going to release them, in hoping that the media would sort of like slow down their relentless asking of him to like release them. But actually all that's done is ramp up it. So it's done the opposite effect of what he's wanted. So maybe it's just like he's just not been able to like properly be able to deflect the question. And you're taking him too seriously. Is that's what you have to remember, is that man will say anything, especially to the media.
Definitely, it's hard to take Trump seriously, so I agree with you. He does manipulate the media, so I'll give you that. But again, this is not all of those other things. What you're trying to say here is like, okay, I have a son, I have a daughter, I have a bunch of kids, and I'm giving them candy. Or I say, hey, there's candy right here in my hand. I have candy right here, a whole bag full of candy. And I'm hoping that my kids, when I offer them candy, all of a sudden say, you know what? I think we shouldn't eat that. That's not good for our health. We're not going to eat that. What you just said was that Donald Trump was promoting the Epstein files and the release, hoping that it would slow down the media and they would stop reporting on it. Even Trump would not make that mistake. So it's not that. I appreciate the interesting idea. Let's keep them flowing. But clearly that does not pan out. Yes, Apostate Nate over on Twitter Spaces. You've been waiting patiently.
Hey, Lee. One thing about this ordeal that's given me a lot of... Oh, sorry, 1 second, Lee. I got to mute. I'll be back.
Oh no, Apostate Nate's being attacked by a bunch of Trump supporters. Godspeed, sir. Godspeed. Hope everything's okay. Let's go back to stereo and hear from Charlie. Really appreciate, even though I disagree with you, Charlie, really appreciate the back and forth. Keep leaving me messages.
Listen, you're being ridiculous now. If it got him votes, then you can sort of say that it got him into the White House, right? Don't be silly. You're just being pedantic now.
So, what do they call them? Voter exit polling. It's all available online. And while it's not 100% accurate, it is generally accurate. And if one person voted for Trump because they thought he's the second coming of Jesus Christ, then yeah, that got him into the White House. But it's not what beats Kamala Harris. First off, the last couple elections, the last couple Trump elections, I have always said, let me rephrase that, the ones that he won, I have always said, it's not that Trump won, it's that the Democrats lost. And Kamala Harris definitely lost, screwed herself over, went on The View, was asked, anything you do differently in the last 4 years? No, not really. Well, okay. We're going to give you a second chance. Are you sure you don't want to change your answer? No, I don't think we did anything wrong in the last 4 years. That's why Kamala Harris lost. Also, Joe Biden lying about his mental state, the people around him lying about his mental state, the media running with he's the sharpest guy in the room. Okay, all those things lost the election for the Democrats. And Hillary Clinton ran a bad campaign. She lost. Trump won, but she lost. More Kamala Harris lost. And Hillary actually won the popular vote by about 3 million votes. Kamala Harris was destroyed by Trump. But because she lost and he was able to clearly be better than her, which is really saying something. But I will just disagree with you. Not every issue that someone votes for. I mean, racist people certainly voted for Donald Trump. There's more than one person in America who is clearly racist who voted for Donald Trump. But he wasn't elected because he was courting the racist vote in that way. The things he said, okay. They thought, well, out of Kamala Harris, who is a black Indian woman, and Donald Trump, if I'm racist, who am I going to vote for? Clearly, you have a choice there, but it's not what won him the election. So I feel like you're not able to understand what I'm trying to say, and that might be my own fault. Maybe I'm not explaining it well. I feel like I'm explaining it well, but I'm just going to go ahead and say we can move on from that, because not every issue that gets you a single vote gets you into the White House. That's not how an election works. That's not how a mayoral election works. That's not how city council works. That's not how the Senate works. It's not how the state Senate works. It's about specific issues. I was more convinced by your previous argument where you're like, okay, it's all part of an overall package. He's not a typical Republican. He's not a typical politician, because I agree with you. Why would I disagree with that? But Epstein's different because he pulled a 180 recently. He didn't pull 180 on these other, I'm going to release these files. He pulled through with those things. To his credit, he released those files. There's nothing else that's like this. He's not connected to JFK. He clearly is in some way, yet to be determined, connected to Jeffrey Epstein. Apostate Nate, whenever you're finished being beaten by MAGA supporters, I hope something didn't happen to you. Feel free to join in. You did have something to say over on Twitter Spaces. Anybody over on Twitter Spaces, just raise your hand, request to speak, and I would love to hear from you. Let's hear from Tree of Life on stereo.
I'll say another thing is Kamala Harris, if we're being honest, the Democrats just didn't have time. They had about a month before the elections, because basically by the second political talk, Biden basically dropped out of the race, and then they had to replace him with Kamala Harris. And again, she just didn't have the time. She kept switching sides and switching races all the time. It was kind of getting ridiculous. But I truly think that if she had stuck to something on her platform, like actually stuck to it, stop wavering, and she had more time, then yeah, absolutely. But, given the state of which we have elected Biden in and how fast his health was declining, it was a clear choice, not only from the American people, but just a general overall consensus from the rest of the world, so.
Tree of Life, appreciate the comment. You are definitely incorrect. Kamala Harris officially assumed the Democratic presidential campaign on July 21st, 2024, when Joe Biden withdrew and endorsed her as his replacement. Now, arguably, you could say it started much before then, because she was clearly the choice, but that was when it officially happened. And from that moment, she had 107 days, more than 3 months, until the election on November 5th, 2024. It was the shortest general election presidential campaign in modern U.S. history, but that's not what you said. You said she had about this amount of time, and it's about double or triple what you said. So she had enough time. She screwed it up. Was she at a disadvantage because of time? Absolutely so. I don't disagree with you. Why would I disagree with facts? But during that short amount of time, she set campaign donation records. If memory recalls, it was the most money ever collected in a single month. She had a lot going for her. The country breathed a sigh of relief that we didn't have to vote old man Joe Biden back into the office of the presidency and watch his brain slip out his ears like Jell-O. She had so much going for her. She got all the money that Biden had in the bank, and she raised more money in some ways than ever before. Unfortunately, she opened her mouth. And unfortunately, sometimes she didn't open her mouth. That's why she lost. This whole narrative of, oh, she didn't have enough time is bullshit. I'm not attacking you personally. I'm just attacking this. I really appreciate your message, and please leave me another one. But it's complete bullshit. Just like the racism thing, or she's a woman. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. Barack Obama won the popular vote. This is nonsense. And I know you did not say that specifically, but I'll take my opportunity to point out that that's nonsense. She lost because she's a bad candidate. That's why she did not do well in the primaries. She only had the nomination because it was handed to her on a silver platter, which she then broke over her knee and said, I'm going to lose. It's not about time. I would argue she would have done worse if she would have had a full election cycle. First off, if she went through the primaries, she never would have been the nominee. So if she just had a bunch of time, but it was still handed to her on a silver platter, she would have lost more. The more we learned about Kamala Harris, the more people disliked her. The more people realized she was not different. Biden is not an exciting candidate. He won because he was something that people could get behind in a field of many candidates. He's never, I always say, no one has a Biden tattoo on their back. He's not exciting. Kamala Harris is not exciting either, except for the fact that she's a woman and she's a woman of color. That's all that's exciting about her, especially on the campaign trail. After listening to what she had to say and listening to what she did not have to say. So, more details about Kamala Harris. Her team transformed Biden's campaign infrastructure into hers essentially overnight. Within 48 hours, Harris had secured the majority of delegate pledges and high-level endorsements, ensuring her nomination in early August. She had 3.5 months about to campaign before the election day, and she blew it. She totally sucked. She was terrible, just like most Democratic nominees for president have been as of late. More of the same. But at least previously, they had to go through the primary process, which was unfair, screwed Bernie Sanders over, so they redid it. He had a better shot the second time, but he was older. He didn't have that fresh new car smell momentum. And it's still not. Unfortunately, the Republican primary system is absolutely fair. The Democrats still have superdelegates, but they changed it because Bernie Sanders was so clearly screwed over. But it's not perfect yet. Hopefully, they'll eventually do that. Apostate Nate tweets, I will say this, since there is some division in MAGA over Epstein, I have hope for MAGA. I do not. I do not share that hope, but I am encouraged by people like Joe Rogan and other people who are prominent who have said, we're not buying this, Mr. President, when it comes to the Epstein list. I don't have hope for MAGA. Apostate Nate says, Lee, do you plan on reading Kamala's book? Absolutely not, but I will watch coverage about her book. Has the book come out? Is she releasing a book? I'm not going to touch it, but I would be interested in hearing what people think about that on TV or in the New York Times or the BBC or something like that. Yes, Apostate Nate, you're back with us. Your hand is up. What do you have to add?
As far as I know about the book, Lee, it's either out or it's about to come out because she is doing a promo on it. The name of the book is 107 Days, which is the obvious length of that campaign. I kind of want to read it and I kind of don't, just because I don't know how good books like that can be when they're thrown together in such a hurry. I mean, hopefully this wasn't, I'm assuming this wasn't the book she thought she was going to be writing. And
Yeah,
I
she
have,
definitely had to destroy that first woman of color president book she was going to write.
yeah, that's probably the one she hopes she could. I feel like I might actually look at it, Lee, out of a kind of morbid curiosity, but I have to say that I'm just skeptical of texts that are thrown together that quickly. I suspect there's probably a ghostwriter involved. And if that's the case, that kind of doesn't sweeten the pot for me because I'm not a big fan of ghostwriting. You either write or you don't.
One thing that really makes me not want to read the book and certainly not buy the book is the fact that I doubt she's going to take responsibility for the loss. That's always been a problem with Kamala Harris. She shat the bed and she refuses to admit it. So if she actually, I don't wish this on her, but if she was diagnosed with terminal cancer or something and released a book, I Shat the Bed by Kamala Harris, I would read that book. I would buy that book. I would want to know what's in that book. But that's not this book, Apostate Nate. Let's jump over and hear more from Stereo. We'll hear from Charlie again.
I'd be really interested to hear what your opinion is, to be fair, because you're asking good questions and you're sort of like making, playing like devil's advocate, but I still don't really know what your opinion is. Like, what do you think? Why do you think that he's changed his mind? Why do you think that he's not releasing it? I'd be really intrigued to know what you have to think.
Well, I appreciate the. I don't know if that was a compliment. Well, no, yeah, you said I'm asking intriguing questions. So yeah, it was a compliment. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate you engaging in the show. I think. I think that Apostate Nate tweets, I got to drop for the rest of the show. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure, Apostate Nate. Appreciate him supporting me over on patreon.com/NEWZ debate. Patreon.com/NEWZ debate. If you like the show, you'll get your voice heard more often and for longer if you support me on Patreon. But clearly, as has been the case during today's show, I want to have as many people as possible. So if you don't have the cash, you don't have to support me. That's totally fine. But if you got a little bit of money, patreon.com/NEWZ debate. There's a bunch of different tiers. You can choose whichever one fits your budget. So to go back to Charlie's question, I think Donald Trump is in the Epstein files, the Epstein list. I think that he just has a stronger connection to Epstein than we know for a fact right now. I do not believe that he committed the type of crimes that Epstein did. I think he could have known something like that was going on, and there is evidence to support that, and then didn't do anything about it. So that could be a crime. Hopefully that's a crime, but I don't think he engaged in that sort of a thing any more than, reportedly Donald Trump would walk in when the teen Miss USA or whatever it is that he owned, when those girls were changing, he'd just like walk in. There's reports of that. So okay, maybe he's like adjacent to crimes that Epstein committed, but I don't think he committed those things. I think worst case scenario, there's evidence that he knew about some of it, and had a stronger relationship with Epstein than we previously thought, that we previously have guessed might be the case. And in true Donald Trump fashion, he probably did not check the files when he was previously president. Or there's some new files that have been found, new files that were created since he was out of the White House. And even though he kept talking about it in the White House, he just didn't check them. That seems very Trump-like. And eventually someone found something, or he looked into it, probably the latter. Someone found something rather than Trump, and it scared him. And so we've gone into this whole 180 that we've been talking about the entire show. That's what I assume happened. I assume that's what the case is now. I think because child trafficking is such a thing on the right, such a thing that they always talk about being a problem and something they want to work against to stop, this correctly was perceived by Trump, just my own interpretation, my own guess, because we don't know, as to be something that could undo him. Whether or not that would be the case, I have my doubts, because facts don't undo Donald Trump. But this is different. Once again, I think this is a different scenario than anything else that he's ever been involved with, connected to the White House. And so it could be that if all the information came out, it would undo his second term, his final presidency. And so he has pulled a 180 and does not want to release it. That's my guess. Does anyone agree? Does anyone disagree? Let me know. I'm through all the messages over on stereo. We've been going for more than 90 minutes. We could wrap up the show. We could move in a different topic. Let me know what you think. All right. So let me read from CNN Politics. I share this over on my Twitch and Rumble live stream. Haven't talked about that. Go to bit.ly/NEWZ debate for all my links. I'm live on stereo, live on Twitter. Space is also live on Rumble and Twitch. This is from about a couple hours ago on CNN. The House Oversight Committee has issued nearly a dozen subpoenas to the Justice Department and high-profile Democratic and Republican figures, well, at least it's both, for files and information related to the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, a major move that comes as many congressional Republicans call for more transparency around the case. The subpoena to the Justice Department calls for it to provide Congress any Epstein files in its possession with victims' names redacted. It also calls, once again, you never get 100% of everything, so victims' names redacted in this case. It also calls for communications between former Biden administration officials and the Justice Department related to the case. Once again, it's all Biden's fault. The Republican-led panel additionally subpoenaed 10 individuals for closed-door depositions between this month, August, and mid-October, and it gives a list. Subpoena deadlines are often starting points for negotiation on Capitol Hill and are sometimes pushed back, narrowed, or challenged as political and legal disputes evolve around congressional inquiries. The House has fought for years to bolster its ability to force executive branch officials to testify pursuant to subpoenas, but the courts have ultimately given little help to congressional committees, causing subpoena fights to drag out for years with no conclusive ability for the House to use the courts to enforce them quickly. The Republican-led panel subpoenaed the 6 former attorney generals and 2 former FBI directors to speak with them about their time leading the DOJ and FBI that coincided with the criminal investigation into Epstein and his former associate, not sure how you pronounce her first name, G. Maxwell. Republicans zeroed in on former President Bill Clinton, I think he's dangerous, for his documented association with Epstein, which has publicly surfaced as part of civil lawsuits. In their subpoena letter to Hillary Clinton, Republicans cited as reasons to depose her with the hiring of Maxwell's nephew to her 2008 campaign, as well as her relationship to her husband. Can't believe they're still together. So they're not saying that Hillary Clinton did something, but because of the nephew of G. Maxwell's nephew, hired to her 2008 campaign, and clearly she's still Bill Clinton's wife, at least on paper. That's why they've subpoenaed her as well. Demands for more information related to Epstein have roiled Capitol Hill in recent weeks. The subpoena amounts to a show of defiance by some Republicans against House Speaker Mike Johnson, who has attempted to tamp down congressional efforts to push for the release of the so-called Epstein files, instead arguing President Donald Trump's administration should have time to act on the issue. Now they want time. Okay. Johnson has said he supports transparency and has argued the president should be granted space to handle the matter before Congress intervenes. And Democrats, I'm skipping different parts that I don't think are particularly useful to the conversation, and Democrats who have viewed the controversy as a key test for Trump as he tries to satisfy his normally loyal base that has freaked out a bit. It's died down, but there was a big freak out. Moved to use an arcane procedural tool to force the Justice Department to release additional materials. Okay, and that is the entire story. So I guess we're wrapping up. We'll do a show of about maybe an hour and 40 minutes, hour and 45, an hour 50 by the time we wrap up. Any final comments from anybody over on Twitter Spaces or Stereo? We just covered one topic today, the Epstein issue. Donald Trump, the Clintons, I guess Democrats, Republicans, the infighting that's happening now with MAGA supporters. Any other comments before we say goodbye? Oh, hey, I'm sorry. Bjorn is here. I'm sorry, Bjorn. I totally missed you. Let me bring you up. That's totally my fault. How dare I? Let me turn it down so when I call you, it won't deafen our ears. All right, Bjorn, I think you're with us. Great to have you. It's been a long time, friend. Patreon.com/WZ debate reporter. Bjorn, what's on your mind?
Hey, Lee. Oh, just jumping in at the end of this. I guess I feel that, you know, Trump probably thought he was Teflon Don, but the wave of Epstein was threatening to crash over, took a pause, and while they kind of reformulate strategy is how I read it. But I don't know how you all discuss that or if there's any other contentions out there, especially with the pausing of the Congress.
So my question that I have yet to have answered, and that's fine, maybe there is no answer, but I'm wondering why so heavy on the Epstein release and then somewhat recently a complete 180. Any guess as to why that took place? My guess that I mentioned a moment ago, I'm not sure if you heard, is that someone found out that Trump is implicated in some of the Epstein files, and it may include that he knew at least a little of what was going on and did nothing about it, and that their relationship is stronger than we currently can confirm, and therefore they pulled the 180. Why do you think they pulled the 180?
I think that might be true. I think the other thing is just that the pressure and the fervor was mounting so much, and picture after picture of them hanging out and video of him at his wedding, and all these things were coming out. I feel like even just like the association is so toxic right now that it's threatening to overwhelm anything else that Trump's agenda was doing. I mean, this is also why he's been wagging the dog for the last few weeks, trying to distract everybody from that. So I think it could be something like that. I would not be surprised if there's something that new things came up, but I think that their game is not subtle, and I think that if you look at the polling data of people who say is Donald Trump trustworthy, it's something like 70% of people think that he's not trustworthy, and 70% of people think he is corrupt. And so the middle is definitely abandoning Donald Trump. Potentially, some of the far right is as well. So I don't know. I think he is very sensitive to poll numbers, and when he sees those things slipping, regardless if there's much to it or not, he wanted to get ahead of it, and they're trying to formulate a better strategy before things got out of hand. But that's my take of it.
So unlike my guess, do I understand correctly that you think while my idea is possible, you think it's more likely that just stuff was coming out outside of these unreleased Epstein files that was connecting him to Epstein, and therefore he went into damage control as opposed to something that is contained itself in the Epstein files? Is that correct?
That's my guess. I mean, he just also seems like he's been so like you said, let's release the files. So I feel that he was strongly implicated by the files, then I feel like he would not have been beating that drum as much on the campaign trail. But that's why my inclination is kind of more like proximity, and just like the nuclear radiation that's coming off from this issue is just like not good overall for his image and therefore agenda. But yeah, I think that what you're saying is possible, but I don't know. That's my guess.
So I like your idea because it is more explainable in some ways, and then I like my idea because I think it's more explainable in other ways. So I don't buy the abrupt switch just because of things were coming out that were connecting him to Epstein, because if he's not in the files, then it would just prove the point that okay, he knew the guy, they hung out, but Epstein was a rich guy. They all hang out, right? So I feel like that's explainable. But I like your idea because it is less it's more surface level stuff, right? My idea that he's in the files is a deeper conclusion. It's a deeper reveal. And also, like you said, there's no reason that he shouldn't have known that, because if he is implicated in the files, he would remember why he's implicated, the actions that those are reporting on. And he certainly had chances to view these files, and if he was in there, even if he was in there incorrectly as a hypothetical, he should have been able to know that ahead of time. So you have his first term, then he's back in the White House still talking about this for a bit of time before he makes this abrupt switch. So I think the abrupt switch is why I came up with my idea, because it can explain the abrupt switch better in my mind. But your idea is a more reasonable explanation that I think has more questions for me about the abrupt switch. Maybe there are some things that still haven't come out that are not contained in the files, or he just had a really close. Okay, this is a sort of blending of the two. So maybe he had a really close, or much closer than we can prove at this point, relationship with Epstein. It didn't break any laws. Maybe he knew Epstein was a creep, but it's not illegal to be a creep. I mean, there are a lot of ways you could be creepy that are perfectly legal. I mean, you can date an 18-year-old and it's perfectly fine, but maybe it's creepy, right? So maybe he had a much deeper relationship that could be or is starting to be released outside of these Epstein files. And he didn't break any laws, and he was just afraid of that. Okay, that satisfies me a little bit more, but still, that 180 switch is something I'm still scratching my head over. But you have made me think, Bjorn. Bjorn sounds like he's got a. Oh,
Yeah,
hey,
and
you're
I
back.
think that, yeah, I was going to say, I think that the other thing, and there's something in the interim between during Biden's tenure, there also could have been a further digging, and more people coming forward, more people implicating him that he wasn't aware of until he asked Pam Bondi to look through the files, make sure everything was good before he released. And then she was like, "Hey, there's this. Maybe we should rethink this. Maybe let's just say there are no files." And then there's definitely something confusing about that, because it doesn't make sense, at least the way that their behavior is. It's very odd, which which tells me as well that they are clearly not telling us something. The other thing is, like, the conspiracy theorist mind is exploding right now, and as a lot of the conspiracy theorists, there are a lot on the right. This sort of thing is not helping Donald Trump with a lot of his base, like Joe Rogan, etc., and all of his more kind of crazy compatriots on that side. So yeah, I agree. I think it's good that people like Joe Rogan are, sticking to their guns and at least separating on this point and not being complete sycophants, which the majority of them are. But I don't know. It's a wild time.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Joe Rogan, because of COVID and everything else that he's done on his show, has really gotten a bad name. Some of it deserved, some of it, hey, he's a comedian who started a live video stream that turned into a podcast and video, and he's really more known for his video than his podcasting, but successful in podcasting nonetheless. Don't want to take anything from him. And he's just a guy who became famous and then even more famous when he started the Joe Rogan Experience thing. So I don't think that he deserves all of the blame that's been thrown at him, because once again, he's not like a doctor that started a podcast. He's not like a politician that started a podcast, all those different things. But at the same time, I think that there is some responsibility, and he has not done well with that responsibility. I apologize. My iPhone that's running stereo just died. It's having a weird issue. So it's actually on, but I don't think it's working. So I don't think they can hear me over on stereo. So I think we'll just wrap up the show. But to go back to what Bjorn said, I think there is some X factor that will explain the abrupt turn. And I don't buy that it's just what we know now, that they had some kind of relationship. It's either something much deeper that he knows could be discovered, but he didn't realize that previously, or like Bjorn just mentioned, hey, Pam Bondi, check out those files before we release them. And there was some problem that came up. So whatever it is, there's some missing X factor that we just don't know about yet. And we'll have to wait and see if we can figure that out. So big thanks to Bjorn, big thanks to Apostate Nate, Lord Reggie, Charlie, MX, everybody else over on stereo. I'm sorry, I can't remember the names. It's been a lot of interesting conversations. I enjoy these conversations. That's why I do the show. That's why I do news debates. So please follow me wherever you are. Support the show if you can, or on patreon.com/NEWZ debate, and go to bit.ly/NEWZ debate for all of my links, including my video simulcast. That's going to do it. Thanks, everybody. Take care. And I'll start doing more shows and having more announcements on Twitter and my Discord server to when I'm going live. How do you join Discord? Go to bit.ly/NEWZ debate, and there will be a link for you. Take care, everybody. Until next time. Bye-bye.